you're watching this right now, I want to give a shout out to my boy, Brandon Scott Jones. I met this guy a decade ago. When I met him, he was doing sales. Fast forward years later, he became the #1 producer in multiple companies, multiple industries, bringing in millions and millions of dollars for those companies. And eventually he became a growth consultant. I've watched this guy take companies from $100,000 a month to $1 million a month in a few months. And the best part is he is one of the most authentic, hardworking guys I know. And if you're looking to light your sales team on fire, you're looking to give them a breath of life and give them a fighting chance to becoming a 1%er, you're going to want to do some business with my guy, Brandon Scott Jones. All right, I'm here with a longtime friend and somebody that I've known for almost a decade now. He is definitely somebody that has crushed it in sales, like corporate sales. He's also done, remote sales, and now he's a sales operator helping companies scale to $1 million a month. With that, we got Brandon Scott Jones.
What's up? How we doing, Nick? Long
good,
time
man.
coming.
Good.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. So for everybody watching, if you could just give them maybe a 30-foot overview, of who you are, and let's start there.
Okay. So name's Brandon Scott Jones. I grew up in San Diego, California. Shortly after 8th grade, my folks moved us to a farm in Central Valley in Visalia. So I've lived all over California. I went to college up in Humboldt. And while I was in college, I found an opportunity in direct sales, network marketing. I took that opportunity back to my hometown. I was doing a seminar out in the countryside, and lo and behold, my buddy Nick Pena pulls up. Nick Pena pulls up. We did not work together at the time. We had worked in cross companies, or cross lines, you can call it, from network marketing. And in that seminar, in that meeting, me and Nick started to develop our relationship. Well, we go back to our home states, we go back to our home teams. I start running my deal up, and we ended up not running Vima up, which was our first opportunity, as much as we expected. So we all jumped ship and went into a new company. When we went into that new company, we kind of doubled and almost tripled our team size. And we learned a lot about personal development. We learned a lot about investing in ourselves. But the main thing I think we learned, Nick, and I don't know if this is something you think about and reflect on often, but the one thing I think about that we learned a lot about is team retention and team development. We learned how to recruit talent, and then we learned how to keep that talent. So once that second company dissolved and we ended up going into the real world, if you will, I ended up going and working for Vivint, selling security. But I worked at their corporate office out in Utah. I was working over the phones, and I worked on a team of about 175 people on a call center model. At this call center, I came in correct. I had all this personal development. I hired Grant Cardone as my personal trainer, and I tore up the numbers. I became a #1 rep there, and I quickly realized that even if I sold more, I was probably going to keep making less because management kept changing the compensation plan. So from Vivint, I went over to another Fortune 100 billion-dollar company called Wyndham, and I was selling timeshare. I was selling timeshare not face-to-face. Again, I was working over the phones. And the reason that I fell in love with the phones was just because of our ability to get frequent, our ability to get more contacts than if we're going face-to-face or door-to-door. For example, in Wyndham, an average face-to-face guy might sit down with 2 people a day. I was able to talk to 25, sometimes even 30 people in one single day and present them the same opportunity and condense that opportunity down into a 20 or 30-minute presentation. I used to pitch, get to money in 20. But what I really learned there was I learned from management on how to manage a team. I was constantly going in early, studying what the managers were doing. I was staying late, studying what they were doing after work. And then I asked them, I was always seeking knowledge. And one of the things that I asked them was, look, if I'm trying to get into management, or I'm trying to move up this pedestal and go from making $400,000 a year to $700,000 a year up and beyond, what is the trick? And one of the things that really sticks out to me, Nick, is they told me this. They said, Brandon, if you really want to start making more money, you've got to start doing the job that you want before you get the title. And so I started hosting morning meetings before the morning meeting. I would go in unpaid, and I would present my skills, my abilities to become the #1 rep out of 7,000 people at Wyndham. And I would present the information to other individuals. Now, it might sound selfless, but it was actually really selfish, because what I wanted to do was, I heard this saying, right? As the sea rises, so do all the ships. So if I'm beating the #2 guy in timeshare by 50% revenue, I'm smoking and blowing him out of the water, and I'm working less than he's working, What I need to do is increase his skill set, teach him a little bit more about what I know so that he can increase his revenue. And as long as I stay consistent with my 50% increase over his revenue, well, then the ships all rise. And so I started doing that and watched the average sales guy go from selling $200,000 in a month. They broke $300,000 a month. And that's what helped me push over $400,000 in a month, is that I was giving this information completely for free, unpaid, so that the sea could rise and so could all the ships. And then as a top rep, I learned about retainment. I learned about KPIs. I learned about tracking these KPIs and what they all meant to a top performer. And I started duplicating myself in multiple individuals. Another manager comes into town. He says, Brandon, look, I'll give you overrides on the entire organization, millions of dollars in revenue a month, if you can give me 5 or 6 names of people that I can talk to in one-on-one conversations that would say, Brandon is the reason I am here today. And I focused on that, Nick. I focused on duplicating myself and giving away the secrets of the sauce. I was taking these guys that were brand new reps out to dinner so I could teach them how to shorten their learning curve and how to develop into better individuals. And the next time that manager came into town, he was able to one-on-one interview everyone, and they started giving me 1.5% over the entire company's revenue. And that's where my income started to transform from personal production to personal production plus team production. And so I got really excited. I worked there for another couple years until you convinced me to quit and start my own deal, which thank you so much for that conviction. In 2019, I left, started my own business with you as a partner, and we ran up B2C product. We created my own sales training product. We started running it up B2C, and shortly thereafter, unfortunately, COVID hit and we had to dissolve that and go our separate ways. But one of the things I learned was B2C is going to make you pennies. B2B is what makes you thousands. So I started going B2B and securing revenue share deals with some of these up and coming gurus, some of the up and coming guys running ads online, teaching them how to hire, script, write comp plans, how to retain talent, and then how to train that talent so that they can thrive and build their businesses for them. Because if you build the people will build the business.
Couple notes on that. So one, the concept of you said, hey, I showed up early, and one thing I learned at Wyndham was, if I want to have this next job, I can do the actions now, and that makes me think of be do have, right?
Yeah.
And this is something where I had a rep actually. This is probably one of my greatest transformations, Brandon. So I had a rep come onto the sales team. When he first started, he came from a minimum wage job. He was sleeping on a couch, making minimum wage, paying $400 a month for, this couch that he was renting, didn't have a girlfriend, was, overweight, 325 pounds. So I basically started to work with this company, and they're like, dude, this is our sales rep. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's do something. And, 1 year later, he actually went from not knowing anything about sales, no background, to producing $150,000 to $200,000 a month in sales production. Got married, got a house. Point being though is for him, his next thing that he wanted to do. So his next thing he wanted to do was be a leader. And, for him, it was a hard concept to wrap his mind around, but it was, I was like, hey, so Joe, you want to be the leader, right? So look, if I have to choose someone to promote as the leader, and I have a choice between, let's just say, person A, Little Timmy is showing up early. He's helping people. He's staying late. He's coming in with different resources that will help the sales team. And he's doing these actions that a manager would do. And that's person A. And we have person B, who is, let's just say his name is Joe. And person B is, saying, hey, I'll do those actions when you give me the pay raise. Dude, who would you give the promotion, right? And that breaks it down to simple logic. So I really like that you said that. The other thing that I guess we're kind of shifting the topic to is this concept of, working with businesses and coming in as you called it a sales operator. I don't know the exact term, but I think it's been a concept that's probably been around for a long time, but it's definitely a different type of deal structure. So if we could, head into that, and maybe you could share, what is your intention when you look for a company to partner with? What kind of qualities do you like to see? And then what are those main things that you're looking to deliver for them in the first 60 to 90 days to really make an impact?
Yeah. So what I've noticed is owners of companies or founders of companies will typically just hire a sales position or a sales manager position based off of production, not based off of leadership ability. So what happens is a lot of guys will just promote the top rep because they want to pay them more, they want to reward them more, and that person is flying blind 9 times out of 9. What I mean by flying blind is they know what helped them do so much in personal revenue, but they don't know why. They don't know the why. And so they can really explain the how, but it's the why that is so important. And so what I look for are companies, actually what looks for me are companies that need help with revenue. That's who seeks me out. I don't really seek, I don't run any ads. I don't even have a website. It's completely word of mouth on how I get my clients.
Yeah.
And when I think it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So when a company reached out to me and said, hey, Brandon, we really like what you're doing with X company. We really see the culture that you've built there. We really see the revenue you've built there. And we're hiring 50 new sales guys. And we want to put you at the top of this organization to script them, write the comp plans, run the leadership behind it. I look for companies that have in-house fulfillment, Nick. And I also look for companies that are willing to give me conversations at the executive table. Because if I'm running the sales team, I know that I can produce revenue. But if the fulfillment isn't clean and the back end isn't right, then it's impossible for me to wake up in the morning excited to do the deal. It's really frustrating when I have full rights over the sales organization, but I don't get rights over the fulfillment side of things. So now the way I structure my deals after a few learning lessons is I structure the deals so that I have that conversation at the executive panel and I can feed that information down to the sales team and either ramp them up or slow them down just a tad bit so that they can catch up on fulfillment. So I also feed that information that I'm getting from the sales organization and feed that information up. I like to think of myself as the filter between the founders and the executives down to the sales organization. There needs to be a filter there because there's some conversations that happen at the executive table that don't need to be talked about with the sales team. And then there's some conversations that are happening in the sales organization that, quite frankly, don't need to go up. So I create that filter so that those messages come through clean and clear versus them coming in unfiltered and coming in maybe a little bit rough. And so it just allows me to, number one, handle fulfillment conversations. I don't want to ever handle fulfillment, but I like companies that are doing everything in-house because then we're not getting pushed from an external force to scale up or scale down. When we operate in-house, we can scale as the sales team scales and keep an even balance. I've worked with some companies that unfortunately didn't end up fulfilling on the back end side of things, but continuously wanted me to pump the revenue. So we would do 5 to 6, sometimes $10 million in a month, cash collected in the bank, but we weren't delivering on anything we were selling. And I had multiple tough conversations with the executive team, but because I didn't have that seat at the executive table, they didn't take my conversation serious. They were spending $250,000 a week on advertising, so they wanted a big ROAS on the sales team. But if the sales team is getting negative comments and response from their clients, their past clients, it's impossible to build a book of business, which is something I'm a huge emphasizer of. You've got to have a clean book of business because the place that you can get easiest deals is someone that's already said yes to you once.
And
that's
then
who I'm looking for.
And then aside, okay. And then aside from the actual, they do the fulfillment in-house. They're willing to also have you give real feedback and input on, the organization as a whole, because sales is one division inside the organization, right? They can control who steps on the phone, or they can control the conversation with the people that, reach and say, I'm interested, right? But, there's a lot of other factors that make a business durable and make it something that could actually, persist throughout the market changing, right? So with that, do you look for certain revenue or certain trends in revenue before you partner with the company?
So my smallest client that I've taken on was doing about $40,000 in a month. We scaled his business to just under $1 million. I think it was $812,000 cash collected last month. And so I don't think that plays a huge role at what revenue level they're at right now, because I'm not trying to win on something that was already built before I got there. Yeah. What I like doing is helping companies scale. And revenue that I do in the first 90 days, the impact I'm looking to do in the first 90 days is a 50% increase. Bring me on, I will increase your business revenue by 50%. in the first 90 days. If I don't increase it in the first 90 days, cut me loose. I'll give you a full refund on all of the revenue share that we've done up until this point, and I don't need anything from you. But I know that won't happen because I'm putting my reputation, I'm putting my income, I'm putting everything on the line. And I believe it takes a back against the wall mentality to actually deliver on your promises.
And just for everybody watching right now, so I'm going to explain what my version of this model is, and then maybe you can kind of, reinforce it or whatnot. But basically, because when I got into sales, I didn't even know that this was possible. I didn't know that you could get so good at production, go so good at building a team, leadership, where eventually you get to that point where you don't actually have to be the product builder. You don't have to be the guy running the marketing. You could actually come into the right company that ideally there's some alignment with you and I think the founder, and you could say, hey, look, I'm going to grow your business and you're going to give me a rev share for that growth. And essentially you could put yourself in a position where you're making, dude, it could be $100,000 from one client. It could be a few $100,000. It could be $1 million from one client. And dude, I didn't even realize I was doing this model, but this was actually one of the ways that I had my first big wins, Brandon, was partnering with MJ. I think you met MJ. And then they were doing probably $150K a month. And dude, I was just like, dude, let me come in. And, I'm like, all right, cool. I'm doing the sales. And then, next thing I know, we have, appointment setters, we have closers, and dude, we're doing $200K a week. And I had basically a percentage that I was allotted where, dude, I'm like, here's my percentages. And I would give, pay everybody out. And then essentially I was left with, an override of a company making, $1 million a month. And that was, but I didn't consider it a model. I just kind of fell into it, to be honest.
Yep.
But for you with, cause you're doing this, this is your business, right? You're partnering with companies. And how do you kind of, I guess on your end, how do you kind of break that down? Cause right now you have, a handful of clients, right? You have 4 or 5 clients.
Yeah.
So how do you actually break that down and structure that in a way where it's like, these guys know you have other clients and it's a win-win for them. And what are you actually coming in to do when you help these guys grow?
Well, I kind of let them piggyback off of my momentum. It's kind of the incentive of like piggybacking off of my momentum. So, my first client was Mike Barron at the Closer Academy. He reached out to me and said, look, we've had, 400K months, we've had 600K months, and we've had much lower than the 400K months. I'd like to bring you in so that you can help me scale to a sustainable number. So I worked with Mike for about a year, helped him get to a consistent number. We did the best month at 868 in a month. Cash collected hit the bank. And I fulfilled on my promise of increasing his revenue by 50%. But the long-term advantage to him is I taught him a system on what my position does. At the end of the day, I want to be so good at my position that I could leave behind standard operations and procedures that someone else could attempt to come in and at least fill those shoes. Typically, when someone hires out behind me, they need 2 or 3 positions to fill that seat, just because it is very high demand. Now, what I do now is I take that momentum that I built with him and I take that into a startup, or I take that into a company that's already established, and I leverage that momentum to increase their revenue, as well as leveraging the knowledge, the skills, and the experience that I had working inside of a deal. Now, what I do is I come in, and the way that I structure these deals is I require a flat fee, and then I require a revenue share. The reason I require a flat fee is because they need to pay for my time. My time in the business, whether it succeeds or fails, is not, unfortunately, up to me. I don't get final say on whether the business succeeds or fails. I do get final say on revenue, but I can't enforce long-term success of the business, especially if they're practicing bad ethics. So I require a flat fee, and then I require a percentage of revenue. I don't take anything away from the commission for the sales team. I don't take anything away from the founder. I just take a little slice, a little piece. I think of the Walmart model where I want a little bit on a lot. And so that puts me in a really motivated position to over deliver for that client. Now, as I over deliver for that client, I'm training the sales team, I'm teaching the sales team, and I'm giving them that motivation that turns into discipline so that they can maintain the standards even when I might scale back on my time invested into the company. As I scale back on my time invested into the company, I can take on additional clientele and make sure that I'm still delivering for every asset. What happens, Nick, and this is something that's, a fun conversation to have, because it is something I'm witnessing a lot in the market, is people are trying to duplicate this business model. But before they get one client self-sustainable and actually performing at a high level that the founder is happy with, they take on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 clients, and they can't even end up delivering on one.
Yeah.
I tell a lot of my reps, like, why chase 2 rabbits at once when you end up with none? You've got to make sure that you're the absolute best janitor before you can become the sales rep. And then you've got to be the absolute best sales rep before you can become an executive, so on and so forth. These people that are trying to duplicate this business model are taking on 2 or 3 or 4, 5 clients, and the first client is unhappy with the results. So it's unsustainable.
On that note, there is Dan Henry's doing a model like this now, and for me, so let me say this. If you're brand new into doing deals, dude, I don't know if this is like the best model for you, because I think that, for you, Brandon, so we talked about direct sales, recruiting, retention, personal development, building culture. That was a phase of your life where it was like not like a 3-month phase. It was like a 3-4 year phase. And then you had another phase where you were strictly producing, becoming the best. And then you had another phase where you were in leadership, and then you did this model. Like it wasn't a 12-month thing, right? So I see guys that are, growth consultants, and they've been, they haven't ever grew a business on their end, or they've never even sat in the different roles. And the problem with that is this is actually a problem that I see with even guys that are, so I'm just going to say, this is my outlook on it. So when I got into sales, I learned how to do appointment setting. Dude, I set and closed my own deals for not like a month, like fucking 2 years. And these were, 50, 70K, 100K deals. And I got good at appointment setting. And then I went, and I would say I started to close deals. But what I realized is when I went and eventually worked with my buddy, and we scaled this thing up to 200, 300K a week at the peak, because I knew appointment setting, I was able to train the guy to do appointment setting really, really good. Yeah. But what happens is guys are like, dude, I'm a closer now, and I can only close deals. But if you ask them to set their own appointment, they don't know how to do it. And the thing is, they don't know how to do it. And they also don't necessarily know how to duplicate themselves as a closer. And there's so much outside of just, doing deals, because I've even seen guys do deals and they can perform in one company, but if you threw them in another company that doesn't have the right structure, they're not performing. And I think that's the difference between, you and me. Like, you could throw us in a lot of different companies and we're going to get an increase in revenue because we even have some awareness of the marketing side as well. And it's like, these guys so with that being said, although I do believe this is a beautiful model, I think it's a beautiful model for the right people. It's not for everybody. You got to put in your time and work. So with that being said though, dude, I still think it's something for people to reach towards, right? So like for you, what's the fastest where you're like, dude, I came in here and then, 8 months later we scaled to this point, and who's counting numbers, but this client was worth maybe, a certain amount. Like, what's been one of your biggest transformations that you've had with the client?
Yeah. So, I won't mention the name just because this company has since dissolved.
Okay.
But my biggest uprise, you could say, was a company that was doing about $125,000 cash collected in a month. Mm-hmm. They brought me on and we did a huge hiring campaign. I mean, we blew up the hiring. We hired 50 closers. We had over $250,000 in ads going out. We had 287 auto booked appointments per day.
Wow.
And we scaled that from where we started to just over 6 figures monthly to, in our biggest month, doing about $10 million cash collected hit the bank. There was 1 week where I paid out a sales rep who was a part-time teacher. I paid her a $96,000 commission check for 1 week.
Wow.
And I made just slightly more for that specific week.
Wow.
But it's because she wasn't the only one winning at a high level. That week, I mean, our average commission, if we looked at the 50 sales rep, average commission for a week was about $13,000 in a week. That doesn't happen by not understanding the marketing side. That doesn't happen if you don't understand how to duplicate yourself and train the individuals on how to do what you've done. I mean, I've had, $4 million cash collected years selling a 19% interest rate on $100,000 loans in real estate. I mean, I knew how to live as a janitor, as the leader, as everything, so that when there was trash on the floor, as the CEO, I could go pick up the trash and know where it went.
That makes sense. And that's definitely quite, so just to put it in perspective, you guys, that account was, I'm just going to do some rough, worth $1 million for you. Like that account, that one deal.
Yeah, that account specifically was worth $1 million. That was $1 million account. It was a very beautiful opportunity. It was someone that I actually knew for over a decade that was the CEO and the founder of that company. We worked really, really well together. That synergy made it work really well. But as I've found more recently, Nick, what I'm looking for in a founder is someone who's coachable and someone who doesn't have a large ego, but knows they know their lane and is understanding that their lane might not be the same as my lane. So I complement really well with an introvert founder. That's where I thrive the best, because I'm obviously an extrovert. I can talk to anyone, anytime, anyhow. And I like working with people that don't have that skill set because it complements really well. I've looked at it this way. If a partner, and I'm not looking at these businesses as partnerships, right? If a partnership agrees on everything, then there doesn't need to be a partnership. One person could run the deal. The reason that these partnerships work so well is because we're both coachable. We both can accept feedback, and we both can accept adapting to change. Our teachability indexes are very high. When he tells me we need to slow down here, I slow down there. But when I tell him he needs to increase here, he increases there. For example, one of my clients right now, not the greatest at public speaking when we first met. But as working with me over the past year and a half, he's increased his ability to public speak tenfold, which now allows me to tell him to go do public webinars, and we recruit for those webinars, and he can host a meeting with 500 people when before we met, he was not even comfortable talking to one person or even 3 people at a time, right? So it complements really well, and we both become better in the process. I'm all about growth. I want to grow, and then I want to be someone that can invest in the businesses as well. I constantly am investing back into the businesses, whether it's spiffs for the sales team, whether it's incentives for the sales team, or whether it's, buying my partner's Rolexes, whatever it may be. I'm constantly investing back into the businesses so that I can thrive in that organization and know that I care about them. Because people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So I'm a huge believer in showing people that you care, that your time, energy, and investing your resources.
I love that. And on this note, I could go down. There's like 2 or 3 other topics I want to talk about. I know that you got to go and catch a flight here soon. So let's do this. We'll spend the last 10 minutes or so talking about what makes a great sales team, and how do you actually do what you do, and what are those qualities and characteristics? So that's the next topic. We'll keep it positive, and I think we might have to do another one on mistakes that people make.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, because I think you can learn just as much from mistakes as you can from successes. So we'll talk about the successes of what makes a good sales. I think we'll start with what makes a good sales team.
Yep.
It's all about, and I'm going to use this word. A lot of people get confused on words, but I'm going to use the word culture. Culture is a concept that a lot of people think that they understand. They think it's rah, fire. They think that it's people winning at a high level, or they think this and this and this. And sometimes they get confused. Long-term culture is only built and developed as the business grows, so do the people. So I'm a huge emphasis in order to create culture, I do book clubs with my sales team where we all get the same book. We read the book during the week, and on Sunday night or Monday morning, we review what we learned in the book, and then we immediately implement it into our daily lives. So that's one little piece. Another piece is you've got to create a future-based cause. And by creating a future-based cause, what I mean by this is incentives for the sales organization. Hey, when you hit $1 million, I'm going to gift you a Rolex. When you hit $1 million in cash collected, you get a Rolex. When you do $5 million in collected revenue, I'm going to fly you and your family to a vacation that you desire, all expenses paid, and take care of you guys. When you hit $10 million, cash collected, hit the bank, and you've done it ethically and with good business, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll go ahead and build you an asset buy you a house that's making $3,000 a year or $3,000 cash flow a month, and something that's going to double in value over the next 10 years. I put these very large, and then there's obviously very small incentives you roll out. Hey, hit 20K cash collected today, and I'll go ahead and do XYZ. Everyone gets an extra $100 on their commission check. Everyone gets double commission today if we hit $50,000 cash collected. I'll roll out these incentives, and it's coming out of my budget. It's something I'm willing to pay for, because I know that I have to invest. I have to tithe 10% of my income back into the organization, or the organization will fail. And so I've got this culture I build through not only helping them personally develop, do book clubs, but I also give them all access to me as a mentor. Now, Nick, you and I did B2C for a long time. B2C, my mentorship is about $5,000 a month. The value that I'm investing into these guys with a one-on-one coaching call is probably about a $1,400 value for a 30-minute consultation. I'm breaking down their where they're at. I'm breaking down where they want to go, and I'm helping them see the roadmap more clearly than they came into the phone call. By the end of that phone call, that person feels like they have direction, and without chaos in your life, you can create certainty. And when someone is certain, they become unstoppable. So my main job is to not only invest into them financially, but also invest into them with my time and my talents. I know what it takes to be a top producer, which is why I can teach someone what it takes to be a top producer. If I would have skipped that 9-year journey of becoming a top producer in my own life, on the phones, in production, I would have missed those little tiny nuances, like what a morning routine looks like for a top earner, what they should be spending their money on as a top earner, how they should be treating their commission checks as a top earner, what type of commission would be realistic, how to set smart goals, all of these things, how to track progress. I mean, all of these little nuances that someone who skips the steps too quick doesn't understand, which is why they can only take someone who is destined to be talented and turn them into skillful people. I like to take the person that was not destined for greatness and teach them how to attain something they thought was once impossible.
Yeah, I love that, dude. I love working with underdogs. That's the thing that gets me. I love it. On that, it's also something, as you're saying that, there's one billionaire I've ever met in my life where I'm shaking his hand, and I get to actually have a conversation with him, and he went from making $50,000 a year at the age of 55 to being worth $3.2 billion. That's a big jump. And one thing he shared is you're a few pieces of information away from greatness. And that makes me think of what you just said right now, because somebody can literally be a few degrees off, and you might have the guy that maybe even was producing all right before, but because he doesn't have that awareness of spotting just a few extra out points, areas of opportunity that could be improved, he's missing the mark, and guys aren't going from, barely making it by to being a top producer. So I think that makes a lot of sense. On that note there, dude, I know we got probably one or two more questions here before you got a jet. So, all right. So you have, I love those points you said. So with let's just say for you going in, right, what do you feel like is the most impactful thing that you can do and show up for your team as a leader, on a daily basis to, launch them into production?
Dude, I think it's this, Nick, and I'm so glad you asked this question, because this is a great question to touch on for a minute. I think it's speed of the leader, speed of the team. And a lot of times what companies are missing is a white rabbit for the team to chase. So what I do, rather than depend on the leader or the founder of the company to be that white rabbit, because they have so much going on balancing this business and balancing this life, I become that white rabbit. I let them see my bank account. I let them see my lifestyle. I let them see the results of this business that I've been running. And then I ask them to take my head off. I tell them to come replace me. Take my job. I challenge you to take my job. And Nick, I can promise, and I think you can attest for this, there's no one that's working harder than me inside any of my business opportunities. Not a single person waking up every single day at 4 a.m. and studying the word for an hour. There's no one taking 30 minutes every morning and journaling, writing their gratitude list, writing their visions and visualizing and meditating every morning. There's nobody taking that 90 minutes to go work out and do something so freaking hard in the morning that everything else becomes easy. A lot of people are checking their phone first thing when they wake up. I don't check mine for 90 minutes after I wake up. There's just little things that I do in my day-to-day. I jam-pack my meetings. I've been on 9 meetings just today, Nick. There's nobody working harder than me. And as long as I'm certain in that, because of my discipline, my confidence, and no chaos being in my life, I can create confidence. And I can confidently say with conviction that nobody on this sales team, nobody in this organization even, will ever outwork me. And I challenge you to do that. And that creates some pretty fired up sales guys. You tell them that you're willing to cut them 1 week of your pay if they beat you in any area of your life, and people start moving a little different. And it's not even that they're looking for the money. They're not even looking for the role or the title. What they're looking for is a challenge. People love competition. And I compete with my sales organizations every single day. So in personal production, Nick, I'm still selling. I'm still actively taking phone calls. I'm still jumping into calls with clients that only have $20 and closing those deals. I'm still going into conversations with clients that have $150,000 and closing those deals. In all of my business organization, there's nobody touching more money than me. I know that I've got to be the speed of the leader for the speed of the team. So I have to work extra hard and diligently so that I can set the standard of what a top producer looks like. And then I lay out the challenge. Come take my head off. Come beat me. I will hand you the keys to the mansion. I will hand you the keys to the life if you beat me. And people thrive under competition. I mean, you know this as a D1 athlete. I mean, you know that people love competition. You get across a map from someone and they say, you ain't beating me today. It fires up. It brings something extra out. And especially if you know that they're a fellow, All-American wrestler, you know that you're going to tap into something different that you didn't need when you were going against the guy that was just a JV wrestler. Toy around with that guy. You treat him like a toy and you end up winning that match. But to bring out the best in someone, you have to put the best in front of their face. So I believe, and I know this because of my credentials. I mean, I can pan it just a little bit here and I can show just some of my credentials. And just show some of the millions and millions of dollars. Just on that top of my shelf right there, there's over $25 million in personal production. In the awards back here, there's over $3 million in personal production. The one up there is $10 million in personal production. I don't say I'm the best. I first had to prove to myself that I was the best so that when I do challenge someone or a team or an entire organization, I know I'll win. And I know they'll win by being challenged and presented with the best.
I love that. And I think that's a good point to wrap up here. And my takeaway from that is, you are speed of leader, speed of the team. You are setting the standard for the team. And the standard that you are setting is so freaking high where these guys have to reach and climb to, if they even take, so it makes sense because if you come into a business and you are, let's just say the business is operating and they're doing 50K a month or 100K a month, doesn't really matter. And you come in and your standard is, dude, I built companies that do $1 million a month. It's like, dude, these guys, just by being near you, their standard's going to increase. The business increases. It's a win-win-win all the way around. The guys in the company make more money. The founder makes more money. You're making more money. More clients are getting helped. It's a win-win-win-win all the way around. So I love that.
You got to create win-win situations. And then last point is when I come into a founder of a business, when I come in to close a deal with another partnership, is I say, would you rather make 40% of $100K a month, or would you rather make 30% of $1 million a month? Which one would you rather make?
Take the bill. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Cool, man. Well, hey, Brandon, I appreciate your time. For everybody watching this right now, this is going to be on YouTube. You can find Brandon's socials down below, and then Brandon at the, we'll touch base after this, but I'll get you these chopped up for you, and you can do what you want with them. Cool. Sounds good.
Appreciate you, Nick. Thanks so much for your time, man. I'll see you tonight.
Yep.